France, Germany, Italy. Three of the most powerful economies in human history. Countries that built empires, funded revolutions, and wrote the rules of the modern world. And right now, in 2026, every single one of them is growing slower than Kenya. So what happened? How did the continent that used to run the world quietly fall behind? And why is almost nobody talking about it? The numbers don't lie. Let's start with the raw truth. France is projected to grow at just 0.9% this year. Germany, Europe's so-called economic engine, also 0.9%. Italy? Even worse, at 0.8%. For context, the global average growth rate sits comfortably above 3%. Sub-Saharan African nations are averaging double what Europe is posting. Vietnam, Bangladesh, even Ethiopia is outpacing the continent that invented the Industrial Revolution. Now, some people will say, that's normal for developed economies. And yes, mature economies grow slower. But this isn't just slow growth. This is something more dangerous. The triple deficit trap. Here's what makes Europe's situation uniquely alarming, and what most mainstream coverage completely misses. Europe isn't just facing one crisis. It's facing three at the same time. Economists call it a triple deficit, and it's the economic equivalent of a patient with three organ failures simultaneously. First, the fiscal deficit. European governments are spending far more than they're collecting in taxes. France alone is running a budget deficit above 6% of GDP, higher than most developing nations. Second, the current account deficit. Europe is importing more than it's exporting. The trade balance that powered Germany for decades? It's crumbling. German exports are down. Manufacturing is hollowing out. Third, and this is the killer, the energy deficit. Europe never truly solved its energy problem after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. It rerouted, it scrambled, it improvised. But the continent remains dangerously dependent on energy routes through the Middle East. Which brings us to something happening right now that could make everything worse. The Iran wildcard. The Iran crisis isn't just a Middle East story. It's a European story. Europe relies heavily on energy supply chains that run through or near Iranian-influenced territory. Every spike in Middle East tension sends European energy prices higher, and European businesses, which are already struggling, absorb that cost directly. When energy prices rise in America, it hurts. When they rise in Europe, where energy is already 2 to 3 times more expensive than in the US, it can break the industrial base. That's exactly what's happening. German industrial output has been contracting. Chemical companies, steel producers, manufacturers, some are quietly relocating operations to the United States, where energy is cheaper and regulations are lighter. The capital isn't just slowing down. In some sectors, it's leaving. The twist nobody sees coming. But here's where the story gets interesting. While the old powers fade, something is quietly rising in the east of the continent, Poland. Most people couldn't find it on a map without trying. It's not in the headlines. It doesn't have a famous fashion week or a famous football league. But Poland is projected to be the fastest growing large economy in the entire European Union * 2 years running. Why? Because Poland did the unsexy things that work. It invested in infrastructure. It maintained manufacturing. It didn't overregulate its energy sector. It stayed lean when its neighbors went soft. And it's now attracting the very capital and companies that are leaving times Germany. The map of European power is being quietly redrawn, and most people haven't noticed yet. Why nobody admits it? So why isn't this the biggest story in the world right now? Part of it is politics. European leaders have every incentive to project confidence. Admitting structural decline is electoral suicide. Part of it is nostalgia. The world, including the media, still sees Europe through the lens of the 20th century. Paris still feels like the center of civilization. But feelings and GDP charts don't always agree. And part of it is that this kind of decline is slow. It doesn't look like a crash. It looks like a slow leak. Every year, a little slower, a little less competitive, a little more reliant on debt to maintain a lifestyle that growth no longer supports. That's not a headline. It's a trend. And trends are invisible until suddenly they're not. Europe isn't dying overnight, but the data is telling a story that its leaders are refusing to read out loud. Slow growth, triple deficits, energy vulnerability, industrial flight, and a new generation of Eastern economies quietly stealing the crown. The question isn't if Europe's economic power shifts. The question is how fast, and what comes next. If you want more videos breaking down the economic stories that mainstream media buries, subscribe. Because this is just the beginning.